Wife regrets taking empowering advice to open up their marriage. I'm in a mess and need some advice on how to save what's left of my marriage. I've been married to my wife, let's call her Brenda, for 5 years. We've been together for 7. We met in our second year of community college. I got a 2-year degree in office management, and Brenda went on to get a 4-year degree in business administration from a remote university. Fast forward to today, I'm 27 and Brenda is 26. We were planning to start a family later this year. Our dream was to have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. Our marriage seemed perfect, and both our families adored us. But then Brenda messed it all up. She started getting too close to this delivery guy, let's call him Mike. Mike is 25 and single, and has been delivering to Brenda's office for nearly 2 years. From the moment they met, there was some sort of chemistry. Not necessarily romantic, but something was there. Brenda and Mike would chat for about 10 minutes every time he delivered a package. She looked forward to seeing him and always made sure she was up front when it was time for his delivery. One day their conversation went further than normal. Mike told Brenda he had a personal question for her. He said it was very personal and didn't want to jeopardize their working relationship. Brenda told him to go ahead and ask. Mike then said, "I feel a very strong attraction to you and wondered if you felt it too." Brenda, always one for drama, took a moment and then admitted she felt it too. Mike confessed he would have asked her out if she weren't married. She thanked him for the compliment, and that was the end of their conversation. He left, and that was that. For the next week, they just had brief, awkward small talk when he came in to deliver packages. Brenda felt guilty, but couldn't shake the feeling. At home, I thought everything was fine. Let me be clear. I was always totally satisfied with Brenda as a lover, friend, and wife. She was perfect for me. But she started dreaming about having both me and some kind of relationship with Mike. She started looking into polyamory and open marriages. She thought these ideas were silly and gross, but kept reading about them. She knew I wouldn't agree to such a thing, and even if I did, it could hurt our marriage, and our families might stop talking to us. Weeks went by, and our married life was going great, but Brenda kept thinking about Mike. She found a blog post titled, "It Doesn't Hurt to Ask," written by a woman in a successful open marriage. This woman loved her husband, but wanted a relationship with a man she met while volunteering. The woman kept these feelings bottled up for over 2 years, and then one day just decided to ask her husband. To her surprise, he was very interested. They opened their marriage, and now both have partners outside the marriage that they see 3 to 4 times a month. The blogger claimed their marriage was stronger than ever. Brenda got it in her head that this was exactly what she wanted. So one Sunday morning, as we lounged around the house, she brought up the subject. She asked me, "I just read this online post about open marriages. What's your opinion on them?" I asked if she meant couples sleeping with other people. She confirmed and asked again what I thought. I told her it was disgusting and that people should just get divorced if they want to sleep around. She told me it was becoming popular in the U.S. and other Western countries. I was disgusted by the subject, so she quickly changed it. I thought that was the end of it. A couple of weeks went by, and Brenda and I were cuddling in bed after some great sex. I'm lying on her chest and can't see her face, and out of the blue she asks, "Who did you have in mind when you brought up open marriages last week?" I was startled and got a pit in my stomach. I slowly raised my head, turned to look at her and said, "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" Brenda then shared that she had read some research suggesting that if a woman mentions an open relationship to her partner, she has either already cheated or she has someone else lined up. Her revelation startled me. Actually, it shook me to my core. Brenda could see the effect her words had on me and said, "I know you too well. I can tell you're hiding something, so be honest." I fell silent, looked away, and then told her that I had never cheated on her and would never do so. I could have left it at that, but I didn't. I then admitted that if we ever considered an open marriage, there was a friend at work who I might consider. Brenda asked, "Tell me about this work friend. So I began to explain about Mike and our interactions up until then, including what Mike had told me about his feelings, but didn't disclose that I had reciprocated the same feelings back to him. Brenda's next words freaked me out. She said, "You know, technically you've already cheated on me." I became irritated and responded defiantly, insisting that I hadn't, but she countered, "Yes, the relationship you have with this Mike guy is what is termed an emotional affair." I had never heard of this concept before, so Brenda explained it to me. I was getting more and more frustrated, and Brenda suggested we stop discussing it for now, as she needed to get some sleep due to an early start the following day. She fell asleep quickly, but I couldn't. Instead, I grabbed my phone and began to research emotional affairs, reading numerous articles and posts about them. Brenda was right. What I had with Mike was dangerously close to being an emotional affair. No, let me correct that. It was indeed a full-blown emotional affair. I felt horrible, as though I had betrayed my wife. Unable to sleep, I got out of bed, went downstairs, and made myself some tea. I eventually fell asleep on the couch around 4 a.m. At about 6:45 a.m., Brenda woke me with a kiss, saying she was leaving for work, and I needed to start my day as it was almost 7 a.m. As usual, I returned her kiss and told her I loved her. But this time I put even more emphasis on the sentiment, my mind clouded with guilt over my feelings for Mike. Several days passed, and once again we were lying in bed after making love, when Brenda suddenly said she'd be willing to try an open marriage if I really wanted to. This took me aback, and I asked, "Why are you bringing this up now?" She explained that she'd been thinking about our discussions and figured we should try it while we were young if it was something we desired. I expressed interest but vowed never to jeopardize our marriage or love, as she was the most important person in my life. Brenda responded by saying, "If our bond of love is strong, it will withstand infidelity." I countered that a mutual open relationship wouldn't be considered infidelity because we would both be agreeing to it. Instead of commenting on that, she simply said, "Consider our marriage open starting right now." I was taken aback once more and urged her to slow down, saying we needed to establish ground rules. She specified that the only ground rules she wanted were: 1. We needed to announce who we planned to sleep with and when in advance. 2. We had to disclose the encounter to each other afterward without going into graphic detail. And 3. Protection must be used for all forms of sex. No exceptions. I agreed to her stipulations and proposed adding a couple more points. 4. We would keep our open marriage confidential. And 5. We would promise each other that these extramarital relationships wouldn't destroy our marriage and we would remain together. Brenda stated that she could not agree to either of these conditions. When I asked why, she simply said she didn't and wouldn't agree to these stipulations and did not want to discuss it further. I felt very uneasy about this, as this was totally out of character for Brenda, but I cuddled up to her and we fell asleep. My discussions with Brenda left me uneasy about the whole open relationship thing, like she had some ulterior motive. So for the next month I did not pursue the open relationship, and we lived our lives normally. During this time I stayed distant from Mike at work, only having short basic discussions with him about the weather, how busy he was and how busy I was, superficial things like that. Then one day Mike told me that he really missed our conversations and asked me what was wrong. I told him that I was busy here at the office and at home and just didn't have time to talk lately. In my head, I was thinking about if I should tell him about my open marriage. I decided I would. How I wish I could turn back time and undo this decision. It didn't seem appropriate to have such a discussion at the office, so instead, I invited him to meet for a drink after work that day, to which he agreed. We met at a local bar that had an outdoor patio, perfect for the warm early spring weather. I told him about my recently opened marriage and came right out and asked him if he'd be interested in a relationship with me. He didn't hesitate and said yes. He said he's been waiting for me to come around and hasn't pushed out of respect, but said he had been having dreams about me for months now. Most of our conversation during that meetup was flirtatious in nature. It was a Tuesday, and we agreed to meet the following day for our first romantic encounter at his apartment right after work. However, I emphasized that I'd need to leave by 6:30 p.m. to return home to my wife, who remained my utmost priority. That night, I returned home and prepared a quick dinner for Brenda. After dinner, I informed her about my discussion and meeting with Mike earlier in the day, and that we had scheduled a date for the following day after work at his place, provided Brenda was still comfortable with proceeding with our open marriage. I could tell Brenda was taken aback as she responded, "Oh yes, okay, so you're going to meet him tomorrow?" I confirmed but reassured her that we could still call it off, as my main priority was her and us. She insisted, "No, let's do this." We hugged, but I sensed stiffness and distance in her embrace, unlike our usual ones. I attributed this to nerves. We didn't talk much that evening, as she was occupied with working in her office, and I had my own tasks to complete. When we went to bed, I spooned with her and tried to initiate intimacy, but she mentioned she was too fatigued and needed to rest. The next morning, when I woke up, Brenda had already left, leaving a text explaining she had an early meeting which she had forgotten to tell me about. She added that she'd see me that night. This was unlike her, but I dismissed it and continued with my routine of getting dressed and heading to work. I chose a particularly nice outfit that day, aware that Mike and I were going to meet right after work. Throughout the day, I texted Brenda but received no response. I was once again considering canceling the date with Mike. Telling you my story, I really wish I had. I received a text from Brenda. She wrote that she loved me and would see me that night. This brought a sense of relief, and I took it as a green signal from her to go ahead. I'll jump straight into it. Mike and I met, and the sexy time was great. Not quite to the satisfaction level I have with Brenda, and definitely no feelings of love, but very fulfilling, mostly because of the sheer lust and forbidden aspect of what we were doing. I left his place after about an hour and a half and got home just after 6:40 p.m. To my surprise, Brenda was not home yet. I was okay with this, as it gave me time to shower and put my clothes in the washing machine to remove Mike's cologne smell. I didn't want Brenda to be exposed to this. Though I felt fulfilled physically, I had a deep feeling of guilt, shame, and remorse and just felt dirty. I had a real tug-of-war going on in my mind and was nervous. I decided that I would prepare a quick but great dinner for Brenda and lit candles to create a romantic mood. I wanted to make sure that she knew how much I loved her, and that the physical affair with Mike meant absolutely nothing to me. It was just physical, and was nothing even close to the love and physical fulfillment I have with her. I was hoping that we would end our night making love. I know some of you may think this is selfish and downright gross, but keep in mind I used protection for everything I did with Mike, and no bodily fluids of any kind were exchanged. At 7:30 p.m., Brenda still wasn't home, and I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. So I texted her, stating I was home and at dinner waiting. I heard nothing from her. It was now 8:50 p.m., and I was getting worried. I kept calling her and leaving messages and sending texts. At around 9:30 p.m., I got a text from her stating, "Don't wait up, I'll be home late." I texted back asking where she was and who she was with, but she didn't text back. I was exhausted and fell asleep sometime after midnight. I was awoken by the sound of the shower in the spare bathroom running and got up to investigate. The door was locked, totally uncharacteristic for Brenda, so I knocked, but she didn't answer. Then, 10 minutes or so later, Brenda emerged with a towel wrapped around her and said, "Hey, how was your night?" I told her it was fine, but then she directly asked me, "Did you have sexy time with Mike?" I asked her not to use that term, but then admitted that yes, Mike and I had been together. I then asked where she had been. She said she had spent the night at several bars and had been out dancing. I asked who she was with, as I could smell cologne on her discarded clothes. I asked, "Who is this him?" She stated that since they didn't sleep together, she didn't need to tell me who he was. I can't say the explicit words here, but I can add that she never used the F word to me, so her way of talking to me and using that word made me very worried. I then asked her why she used the guest bathroom to shower, and she told me she would be using the guest bedroom and bathroom until I took 2 STD tests. Her words crushed me, and I responded, "What? This wasn't part of our rules. I made sure Mike used protection for everything we did." She retorted, "Have you never heard of oral HPV or oral herpes? I'm not getting within 6 feet of you until you're cleared. You can consider this my version of social distancing." I was incredibly upset, crying, and told Brenda I wanted to close our marriage, as this was the last thing I had wanted to happen. Brenda retorted, "No way. You had your turn, and now I'm going to have mine." Upset, I kept crying as she simply stated that she was going to bed because she had an early meeting and needed rest. I spent most of the night crying my eyes out, eventually falling asleep on the couch. By the time I awoke, Brenda had already slipped out. She had sent me a text saying, "Don't wait up for me." I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. I sent texts and left messages throughout the day, but she never responded. I was sick and felt like I was going insane, thinking I had likely destroyed my marriage. We didn't have any deliveries that day, so I didn't see Mike. But I called him at 4:30 p.m. and asked if we could meet tonight. He agreed and mentioned that I sounded upset. I told him that I was, but said we'd discuss it when I got to his place. We met, and I told Mike I wanted to end our relationship, admitting it was a big mistake, as I loved my wife and wanted only her. I explained the situation, and he understood. The only thing he asked for was one more hookup, after which he VJT&M'd never interact with me again, other than for work purposes. I agreed, and we had a very short hookup, nothing but the missionary position, which lasted less than 10 minutes. Afterwards, he told me, "That was terrible. You just laid there like a tree trunk." I apologized, admitting that this whole thing was a big mistake and it wasn't VJTM his fault. I got dressed, gave him a final hug, and left. Before I left, Mike said, "I VJTM, I'll never understand men like you." I asked what he meant by the comment, and he simply said, "Nothing," with a look of complete disgust on his face. I quickly left, crying the entire drive home. How could I have been so stupid? I destroyed my marriage for what? For nothing at all. I thought I had to be the dumbest person in the world and again just felt dirty. Brenda didn't come home until 1 a.m. that night. I was sick knowing that I had single-handedly ruined my life. On Friday, Brenda did the same thing. She left before I got up and sent me a text stating, "Don't wait up for me." This distance and coldness were crushing to my soul. I love spending time with my wife in the mornings, evenings, and weekends, preparing her meals, cuddling, taking walks after dinner, and just talking about stupid stuff. This was all gone, and I missed it so bad. I texted Brenda and said I wanted to talk with her tomorrow morning, and she texted back and said okay, as long as it was first thing as she was leaving for the day. I responded back asking where she was going, but she didn't reply. She didn't to get home until 1:30 a.m. I didn't say anything and just laid in bed crying. She again took a shower and just went straight to bed. I woke early to wait for Brenda to get up. She came into the kitchen at 7 a.m. and poured some orange juice. The vibe was very cold and emotionless. She made no eye contact and just sat down at the table with me and started looking at her phone. I got up, went over, and plopped down on her lap and said, "Look at me." She looked away, but I said, "Look at me," and gently grabbed her face. Looking into her brown eyes, I told her that I loved her with all my heart and that I made a bad decision. Not a bad mistake, a bad decision. I told her I was sorry and would do anything to regain her trust and love. She didn't say anything and just looked at me like I was insane. I asked her if she loved me, and she said nothing. I said, "Brenda, please answer me." She said she didn't know. I just started crying and said, "I can make this right." She told me, "I don't think you can." I then called her a bitch and said, "You planned all this. You set me up to divorce me, didn't you?" She said she didn't, but did admit as soon as I brought up the concept of an open marriage, she knew our marriage was likely over based on what she had read. I then asked her why she did to just shut me down and demand that I end all contact with Mike. She said, "You can force someone to be faithful. You either are or you VJ are not, and you obviously are not a monogamous person." I just cried and told her I was, and to not throw us away. She said nothing, just got up and said she was leaving. I asked where she was going, and she said to be back after midnight. I then reminded her that tomorrow was Easter Sunday and we were scheduled to leave at 7 a.m. to drive to my parents' VDJ house. My family absolutely adores my wife, and we spend nearly every holiday with them, as her parents now live in Florida. She told me that she was indeed going. I was shocked and devastated and asked her to please come with me, and she just coldly said no. I asked her what I was going to tell my parents, and she said she didn't care. Then she said, "Just tell them the truth." I begged and pleaded with her to stay home with me, but she just got dressed, took a gym bag of clothes, and left the house. I am destroyed inside and feel totally deflated. I want to ask you all here for any suggestions and steps I can take to save my marriage. TMD really like to hear from any people who have done something similar with open marriages and whether a couple can recover from such a betrayal. TMD really like to hear from people who have successfully reconciled after an open relationship. Thank you for being here and listening to my story. TMAM going back to bed now to cry for the rest of the day. I wanted to give everyone an update. First, I want to thank those of you who responded with feedback and support. It really helped me get through the last couple of days. There were a lot of people who rightfully criticized me and called me nasty names, but I deserve it and I appreciate your feedback too. Easter Sunday and today have been very difficult days for me, two of the worst days of my life. I drove to my parents' home, and when I arrived, the first thing they asked me was, "Where's Brenda?" I lied and told them that she had an emergency at work and would not be able to make it. I told them this as I did not want to upset our family gathering. My family bought my story but grew suspicious as the day went on, as I was not texting or calling my wife like I normally do. To deflect their suspicion, I sent several fake texts to throw them off and acted like I received texts back from her, and told everyone she was still busy at the office and would call me tomorrow. The truth is, she never called or texted me, not even to see if I arrived safely. This broke my heart. I planned to stay over at my parents' house and tell them about our marital problems on Monday. I dreaded doing so as I knew they were going to berate and hate me. Well, I told them this morning, and it went just as I predicted. They yelled, called me terrible names, said they didn't raise me like this, and a bunch of other things. They called my sister to join us, and she proceeded to ream me out too. I cried and told them I was sorry. I told them I know what I've done is terrible, and that I have learned from this and will never make the mistake again in the future. I told them my sole focus for the foreseeable future is to win back the love and trust of Brenda. At the end, though they were very upset with me, they told me they loved me and would pray that our marriage can be salvaged. I drove home Monday evening. During the day I called and texted Brenda, but she did not reply. When I arrived home, I found a note on the counter stating she had gone to Florida to visit her parents and would return on Sunday. I felt so bad as we planned on going to visit them sometime in early May, and now because of me, that's not going to happen. I hate myself. That's all I've got to say for now. I'm just really depressed and sad. What scares me is I'm no longer crying. The hurt and remorse I feel is so deep inside me now, tears are worthless. It's been almost a year and I didn't plan on posting again, but there was such an outpouring of interest from the community I decided to. Well, I have bad news and some good news. First, the bad news. I am divorced. It was final back in December. In the end, Brenda decided she couldn't remain married to me after I was with another woman. She said she could never trust me again and was embarrassed to be seen in public with me. She feels the divorce gave her power back. I disagree, as she never lost her power, and no one knows about my brief connection with Mike except for our families. But okay, whatever. Now for the good news. No, strike that, the great news. Brenda and I started dating again last month. We got back together on Valentine's Day and it's been fantastic. We only see each other whenever she wants, which has been about once a week. but our passion level is off the charts, way higher than when we first got together 7 years ago. Now she's made it clear to me that this is only a physical thing, and that we will never again be married, live together, or be a couple ever again. I'm okay with this. Well, not really, but I'll take what I can get. My goal is to win back Brenda, and if I can't do that, I want to have her babies. Now, don't get the wrong idea. I would never baby trap her. I just would like to have children with this woman. I've thought out how we could share custody and make this all work without being married. I know it sounds crazy, but I love her and don't want children with anyone else. I know doing so would likely jeopardize any potential relationship I might have with another woman, but I don't want anyone else but Brenda. That's all I have to share now, and I'll probably not post again unless something major happens. But I would love, love, love to get your feedback on my situation. Do you think I'm crazy for dating Brenda? Should I just try to move on and find another love and start a family with that person instead? P.S. Mike is not an option and never was. He was just a bad decision I made and will never make again. Thank you. Since that last update, a lot has happened. Brenda and I continued our weekly meetups, but things took a turn. One day, she dropped a bombshell on me. She said, "I think it's time we stop this nonsense. We're not getting back together and I'm moving on." I was devastated. I thought we were making progress, but it was clear she had made up her mind. She said, "You need to find someone else. This little fling we've been having is over." I asked her if she was seeing someone new, and she coldly replied, "That's none of your business." I tried to reason with her, telling her how much I still loved her and wanted to make things right, but she just brushed me off. "You had your chance and you blew it. I can't be with someone I can't trust," she said. It felt like a punch in the gut. She got up, grabbed her things, and left without looking back. The next few weeks were a blur. I tried to move on, but everywhere I looked I saw reminders of Brenda. I went through the motions at work and avoided Mike as much as possible. I felt like I had hit rock bottom. My friends tried to cheer me up, but nothing seemed to help. I missed Brenda more than ever. One day out of the blue I got a text from her. She said she wanted to meet and talk. My heart raced as I wondered what she had to say. We met at a small coffee shop and she looked different, more confident and distant. She started by saying, "I've been thinking a lot about us. I know I was harsh, but I needed to be. You hurt me deeply, and I don't know if I can ever get over that, but I also miss what we had." I felt a glimmer of hope, but I stayed cautious. I told her I understood and was willing to do whatever it took to regain her trust. She sighed and said, "I'm not making any promises, but I'm willing to give it another shot slowly. We need to rebuild our trust from the ground up." I agreed, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. We decided to take things one step at a time, starting with regular communication and spending more time together. It was awkward at first, but slowly we started to reconnect. Brenda still had her moments of being distant and cold, but I tried to be patient and understanding. Months passed and we made some progress. We even went on a few dates, just like old times. But the specter of our past mistakes always loomed over us. Brenda would sometimes bring up Mike or the open marriage idea, and it would lead to arguments. But we kept pushing forward, determined to see if we could make it work. Finally, one evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Brenda turned to me and said, "I think it's time we make a decision. Either we move forward together, fully committed, or we go our separate ways for good." I looked into her eyes and saw a mixture of hope and fear. I took a deep breath and said, "I want us to be together, Brenda. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm committed to making this work. I love you and I can't imagine my life without you." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and said, "Okay, let's do this. But we need to be honest with each other no matter how hard it is. No more secrets, no more lies." I agreed, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't going to be easy, but we were both willing to try. The road to rebuilding our marriage was long and challenging. but we took it one day at a time. Brenda still had her moments of being bitchy and distant, but I learned to navigate through them with patience and love. We went to counseling, talked openly about our feelings, and slowly the trust began to rebuild. Now, a year later, we are stronger than ever. It wasn't the fairy tale ending I had hoped for, but it was real, and it was ours. We learned that love isn't always perfect, but with effort and commitment, it can survive even the toughest storms. Thank you all for your support and advice through this journey. It helped me more than you can imagine. If you're in a similar situation, don't give up hope. Love can be messy and complicated, but it's worth fighting for.